Sharonda. And again, thank you for tuning in. This is Sharonda, and this is my podcast as well as my um YouTube webinar, Spiritual Sense. And today we're going to speak on a topic um, that I coined myself is spiritual branding. Okay. So, and I'm gonna give you an example as to what I'm talking about. So, the topic actually for today is spiritual branding versus OCD. And I give you my account of what I mean by that. Okay. But before I proceed, I'd like to state that that this podcast is optional and no one is sponsoring me in this podcast. Um, it's for entertainment purposes. If it's just so happen to be, a podcast that you're not may not be interested in, I do have other podcasts that may be of interest to you. Um, this being Spiritual Sense, I also have Holistic Health Podcast, where I go over, natural remedies, balancing the chakras and such. I also have Health Matters, where I go over your chronic care type of ailments and illnesses and diseases, as well as my talk radio podcast, as well, which I go over current events, job feeds, educational courses, continuing education, educational courses that may be of interest to you. I go over business and finance type of information, health and fitness information. I do reviews on products and as well as services. Um, Also, I incorporate a little bit of astrology and numerology and horoscopes into that podcast as well. So that's my talk radio podcast. Okay. So today is Wednesday, which is December the 8th, and the podcast that I'm on now is my Spiritual Sense podcast. This particular podcast, I incorporate tarot card reading. I discuss things such as demonology, the paranormal, pagan belief systems, alternative ways of practicing religion, um, and just a number of things that is an open social discussion on those things. Okay. Now, so today's topic is spiritual branding versus OCD, and I'm gonna give you an idea as to what I'm talking about. So, I have been on my journey. I came to a crossroads at the age of 25 in regards to where I wanted to be in my life. I had a lot of answers and to questions, and I think we all do, where we get to a point in our life where we begin to question life. We begin to question purpose and the existence, the meaning behind pure life's purpose and existence. And so, with that, I was at a crossroads in my life at the age of, I say, roughly 28 years old, where, nothing ever seemed right. It was always something. Um, and I began to, you know, get off into new age type of, research in regards to, the paranormal, metaphysics, things of that nature, because I felt as though a lot of the things that was being told to me was not the truth. Like, I felt like I was shielded from a lot of things. Okay. And so, in doing, reaching my spiritual journey and going on my spiritual path, God began to step into my life. And, He began to unleash a whole lot of things that He had put on the inside as a child that I, you know, essentially, um, wondered about, was kind of fuzzy about, and he began to open it up. Kind of like if you plant a seed in a garden, and over time, if you water it, it begins to sprout and grow, and you begin to know, okay, this is the fruits of what I have come into existence, or come into fruition, if you may. And so that's what has transpired. He began to reveal things to us in stages, and he begins to put things on the inside, and he will have you shielded from it in stages, and it will become apparent to you as to what this life experience is all about. So I am going to if anybody that's been following in, they may hear me state some of the similar things over and over again. The reason why I choose to do that is because everybody's not going to sit here and listen to every single one of my podcasts, or watch every single one of my webinars. So it's kind of like bringing clarity as to what I am talking about, in the event that you are not somebody that's following me and able to know. You catch my drift? Okay. Now, so with that being said, I do have the healthcare background. Since 2001. Okay. And my eyes have been unleashed and unveiled to some things that I'm like, okay, I don't know what to call this. And that's what, has spiraled me into my seeking answers, so to speak. Okay, in my pursuit to, clarity and understanding. Now, of course, I know there's, everything in life is not intended for us to know, or even understand. I understand that. However, so I began to get pulled into an industry, within the healthcare system, mental health, and I felt as though that was my calling, that was my passion. I honestly felt for the people. I felt at home, kind of, so to speak. And I began to even question, why do I feel at home in this in a setting such as this? And it became apparent to me as to what the big picture was in terms of what is transpiring in the country and society on a bigger scale, so to speak. And he made it apparent to me what all of that was, and how, even within the language, how things can be deciphered, like to tune off what it is. You tell it in a different way, and that's that, so to speak. So I give you an example as to what I'm talking about. When I received my spiritual awakening and my epiphany or epiphanonic, if that is a word, in regards to this life journey, it was made apparent to me that certain things are put in a tactful manner, so to speak. And I give you an example as to my topic. So when the spiritual eyes has been opened, and you are receptive to receiving the knowledge that God has, and the message that He wants to convey to you, He will make it apparent to you as to what exactly they're talking about and what that means. So, with me having such a hunger and a thirst to know, just about all the things that I can know about mental illness, besides going to school to be a, psychiatrist or a psychologist, um, obsessive compulsive disorder. Um, I'm going to look up that topic and give you a synopsis as to what the definition of obsessive compulsive disorder is. And why I chose to speak on this topic today, in regards to what my eyes has been presented with, what my eyes have come to know. Now, hear me out. I'm not by far a medical professional. I am a licensed practical nurse, been to school long enough to be a RN. Okay? So I'm not here to, to tell you that I'm here to diagnose anybody. Okay? I'm not here to encourage anybody to do anything that's outside of what your medical professionals, meaning your advanced practice nurses, as well as your medical doctors and psychologists or psychiatrists. Okay. So this podcast is on a spiritual sense. Those who are geared to understand and get clarity as to what I'm speaking about. Okay. So I do need to let that be known. So give me just a moment. I'm going to turn this down some, the brightness on this. Okay. All right. So I am on the website, and I'm going to read off what excessive compulsive disorder is. Now, of course, because of respect and regulations and ethics and things of that nature, I don't want nobody thinking that I'm trying to step out of my scope of practice at all, because I'm not. But I do feel as though with the freedom of speech, what was revealed to me, I can put that out and give an explanation as to what God has revealed to me as to what these behaviors are, because I began to ask him and wonder what that is, what it was that I was experiencing versus what I seen in terms of certain behavior. Okay, so it says obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, is it features a pattern of unwanted thoughts and fears or obsessions that lead you to do repetitive behaviors or compulsions. These obsessions and compulsions interfere with daily activities and cause significant distress. Okay. So I'm going to, and it gives examples here. It says it's often centered around a certain theme. For example, an excessive fear of getting contaminated by germs. If a person constantly washes their hands, you have symptoms here where doubting or having difficult tolerating uncertainty, needing things orderly and symmetrical, aggressive or horrific thoughts about losing control and harming yourself or others. Unwanted thoughts including aggression or sexual or religious subjects. So those are some of the things that are often surrounded by those behaviors. It says examples of obsession signs and symptoms include, again, fear of being contaminated by touching objects, often touched by others. Doubts that you've locked the door or turned off the stove. So, you may have somebody constantly checking. If they lock the stove, they lock the front door, they lock the back door. Images of driving your car into a crowd of people. Intense stress when objects aren't orderly or facing a certain way. Thoughts about shouting out obscenities or acting inappropriately in public. Unpleasant sexual images, avoidance of situations that can trigger obsessions, such as shaking hands. So a lot of this stuff is, compulsions and things of that nature. It mentions here that, there are some body biological, natural chemistry or brain functions that causes this, genetics components, such as specific genes, learning. It says obsessed fears and compulsive behaviors can be learned from watching family members or gradually learned over time. And you have risk factors. It says family history, you know, stressful life events, other mental health disorders as well. So basically, God revealed to me what that is. He revealed to me what that is because, I was at my spiritual, I had an event to happen, a life altering event to happen a couple of years ago. And in the midst of that, God made it apparent to me as to what that is. Okay. And so this is why I entitled this, this episode today, OCD versus spiritual branding. Okay. So I give you an example. You know how, for those individuals out there that have worked in healthcare or had to be in a company with people that have had some aging or age-related diseases such as dementia and things of that nature, where you may see they do repetitive things over and over again, and it's the memory coming to the forefront, as they mentioned, and this is what a lot of that is. God had to let me know that a lot of that is a reenactment of something that happened in their time as well as in a time before. It's simply what that is. So it's the brain reinforcing something that happened in the memory as way of, in a sense, like watching the TV. And this is spiritual, manifested in our time and space to where we can relate it in this physical, natural sense of it all. He had to let me see that this is a reenactment of things that have happened in the past, is what that is. And I give you an example. So if a person who has done something and been convicted, meaning have been shamed and punished and ostracized for something, it could be something that's normal or it could be something that's abnormal. That is coming from crucial, critical critique. Okay. And oftentimes those behaviors are fostered and encouraged by way of anxiety, which perpetuates obsession and obsessive compulsion is what I'm getting at. So I give you an example as to what I'm talking about. Most things sexually are going to be shameful. Okay. When you are in an environment where, sex and the expression of love and sex is shameful and deviant and perverted and ostracized. A lot of times people who perpetuate a lot of these behaviors by way of those desires. And you will find that many times when, as a result of pain and suffering, as a result of those behaviors, perpetuates this obsessive compulsion within people. You would find these type of things that happen in, like behaviors that will be considered alternative, such as your homosexuality behaviors, bisexuality behaviors, incest, desires, sexual desires for someone outside of your race or your social class or status. And because of judgment, because of shame and guilt and made to feel a certain way. This is what a lot of that obsessive compulsion, because the body begins to break down, the mind, I'm sorry, knock on wood, it begins to break down. It begins to break down because I have been made to feel ashamed of my feelings. Have been made to feel ashamed of my desires. And oftentimes you will find that those who make you feel shame and guilt and dirty and harmful are the very ones who are doing these things. So that's where a lot of confusion and chaos come into the spirit. Oftentimes you will find people that are like this gravitate to religions as well as churches, because this is God's way of showing you, as a result of this, but this is where I go to be restored. And then when you get over there, you will find that those deviant behaviors are there. And oftentimes it's being fostered and perpetuated in those settings. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's every setting. I'm not. But you will find that that is the truth. People don't want to acknowledge nor accept that, because when you begin to show Satan who he truly is, the first thing he's going to want to do is cause injury and harm to you. So this is why I decided to go ahead and do this spiritual sense today in reference to spiritual branding versus OCD. Now I'm going to give a little bit more clarity as to why I came up with that topic. So once you have been convicted, meaning shame, and have to face that demon, whatever that sexual deviant spirit or whatever vice that's over you, that has reigned in your life and has taken precedence over you. And you have to face the music. Many of times, if it was very, very damaging and discrediting, God would have it to where he will cover you. And oftentimes you will find that this is the way of them covering up what they did in a previous time and space. It would be apparent to you as such. So I give you an example as to what I'm talking about. Again, just reinforcing, say for instance, you may have somebody, God forbid, who was a, rapist. Or you may have somebody who may have suffered some, substance abuse, and, he was a drunk or something. Or, whatever is deemed not to be, quote unquote, right in the eyes of God, so to speak. So you will see that they will be restored. Like God will allow them to be restored and rehabilitated to where they can, be incorporated or can transition back into society and back into life. However, it will be apparent once they get in a certain setting where you are dealing with inquisitive spirits, the inquisitive. God will make it apparent to you in their being that of what that is. And oftentimes you will begin to see that certain people will begin to know what that is. Like of a person who has a high sensibility of spirituality, the eyes are engaged to know. Like God will seal many people from seeing it versus the ones who have been keen to see and know what that is. He will do that. And oftentimes, to restore these people, they may be some OCD where, hyper religious, you may have what they call hyper vigilantes, hyper religiosities, grandiose type of behavior where there's some extravagance or some abundance. When it's too much, where people would see it as greed or too much. And this is God's way of showing you the exaggeration of certain things covers up something else. And you would be spiritually branded, and certain people would know that. And this is why a lot of people choose to what? Go unseen. Meaning not pay attention. Because you have been what? You will have been groomed to know what that is. And they could sit here and they could just, oh my gosh, wow, and all, and you will already know what that is. You will know what that is. And so many of times these individuals, it could go either way. You would have the ones that and when I say the ones, like the ones who are able to pick up on that, spiritually, they will be able to see and detect that. Okay? But with favor, God will shield people from knowing what that is. And what do I mean by that? Even the ones who know, He will shield them from knowing it, from picking up on it. And I think that's oftentimes why you have a lot of people who feel the need to want to distract or cause a ruckus to throw you off from what it is. But it's simply what it is. Okay? So this is why a lot of confusion and things come into place. And, me being the person that I am, whose eyes has been opened, I don't question, God has revealed things to me years ago, so I'm able to detect that. That's why I say it's none of my concern what a person does, and try not to judge, a person as such. But you will already know what that is. Okay? So, again, oftentimes these behaviors are perpetuated by being violated. Being violated. Being nosy, so to speak, quote unquote. When you begin to tell on a situation, or you begin to take note of things, these things are perpetuated in different industries, job force, the spiritual halls, so to speak. And a catchphrase comes to mind as to what I'm trying to get at in a nutshell. The catchphrase, that you hear all the time: what happens in Vegas, what stays in Vegas, so to speak. So, once the odds has been shown, you become a threat. And this right here lets me know, and to let those know who are out there, this is why you have a lot of people who are conditioned to not seem as though they don't aspire to be more or want to be more. This is why, because they will already have known what that is. Okay? So again, talking on spiritual branding versus OCD. Okay? God will have you branded in a time. He will have you typecast, or He will have you set in a certain mold to where you would know what it is, to cover up those behaviors, is what that is. That's what I mean when I say spiritual branded. And so that's typically what that means, okay? So I am going to close out this podcast today on spiritual sense, spiritual branding versus OCD. I thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you're more than welcome to comment below. Until then, you have a safe and wonderful day. Good day.